1,195,000,000 euros. Just let that absolutely staggering number sink in for a second. We're not talking about the GDP of a small island nation here, and we're definitely not talking about the market cap of some hot new Silicon Valley tech startup.
No, we are talking about a football team. Welcome to The Explainer. I'm so glad you're here today because, well, we're going to look at the pitch through a completely different lens. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the squad economics of the France 2026 World Cup team. We're going to explore that fascinating intersection where raw, on-pitch athletic talent meets off-pitch corporate asset economics.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap. We'll start with the billion-dollar Blues, look at their crown jewel, Kylian Mbappé, analyze their midfield and defensive assets, see how they stack up against global rivals like England and Brazil, and finally ask the big question: does money actually buy glory?
Section 1. The billion-dollar Blues.
You know, when we talk about the French national team, we really have to treat them like a highly diversified blue-chip financial portfolio. They belong to what's known as the billion-dollar club. This is an incredibly exclusive tier of national teams possessing a cumulative transfer market value north of 1 billion euros. Based on the latest market data, this is rarefied air that only a tiny handful of countries, specifically England, France, Brazil, and Portugal, have managed to breathe in. It represents years of systemic youth development and premium global club exposure that culminates in just massive economic value. To really put this into perspective, let's break down the French portfolio into individual shares. Among the 25 players called up to the squad, the average asset, meaning just one average player on the team, is worth an astonishing 47.8 million euros. I mean, think about that. The mean value of a player just sitting on the French bench is enough to buy a major corporation. It is a baseline of wealth that most nations couldn't even dream of fielding.
Section 2. Mbappé, the crown jewel.
Now, in any blue-chip portfolio, there's always that one highest-yielding anchor asset. Which leads us to a pretty fascinating question. Out of all the players stepping onto the global stage for the World Cup, who sits at the absolute top as the most valuable individual asset right now? Well, the answer is France's very own Kylian Mbappé. He's holding steady with a massive valuation of 180 million euros. He is the economic anchor of the French attack for sure, and with a track record of 8 goals and 2 assists in his recent major tournament appearances, his physical output perfectly aligns with his immense market capitalization. He's not just a forward, he's a highly protected, incredibly lucrative economic entity. Now, what's really interesting here is what happens when we organize the top tier of French investments by their positional utility. A super fascinating structure emerges. You have Mbappé up front at 180 million, but look right beneath him, Aurélien Tchouaméni and Eduardo Camavinga, both holding down the midfield with identical 90 million euro valuations. Then you drop back to the defense, or William Saliba sits at a cool 70 million. So the wealth isn't just concentrated up top, it's literally distributed right down the spine of the team.
Section 3. Midfield and defensive assets.
To protect that massive 1.19 billion euro overall investment, you're going to need a serious foundation. When you group Tchouaméni, Camavinga, and Saliba together, you can see they form a highly stable 250 million euro baseline valuation. This is the defensive and midfield structure that actually allows a high-risk, high-reward asset like Mbappé the freedom to operate up front. Honestly, it's risk management at its absolute finest. And the return on this defensive investment, it's highly tangible. Look at William Saliba. Valued at 70 million euros, his recent tournament record shows 0 goals conceded during his appearances. I mean, that is the literal definition of return on investment in football. You paid premium market rates to ensure the opposition's scoreline stays at a big, fat 0. Alongside him, you have Dayot Upamecano at 60 million and Ibrahima Konate at 38 million. It is basically a literal wall of capital protecting the French goal. Section 4. Global rivals. England, Brazil. Of course, France doesn't exist in an economic vacuum. If we zoom out and look at the global economic podium, England actually takes the #1 spot right now, with an unbelievable total squad value of 1.34 billion euros. France sits right in the middle at 1.19 billion, and Brazil is close behind at 1.13 billion. This brilliantly illustrates just how intensely competitive the very top tier of the billion-dollar club actually is. The margins separating these footballing superpowers are incredibly thin. We can actually personalize this macro data by looking at the 2 top CEOs of these national portfolios.
In the blue corner, you've got Francis Mbappé at 180 million euros. And in the white corner, England's 20-year-old phenom Jude Bellingham. He holds a staggering 150 million euro market value, which, by the way, has surged over 36% in the last year alone.
Bellingham's massive valuation is a pretty perfect example of modern football economics. He's on a long-term contract with Real Madrid, paying an estimated annual base salary of 20.8 million euros. But it's his off-pitch commercial clout that truly cements his status. With an estimated net worth of around $50 million, his portfolio is backed by massive endorsement deals with Adidas, including his own signature boot line, and a role as a supporter of the house for the luxury brand Louis Vuitton. He is literally a walking, talking global enterprise. It proves that modern football dominance is no longer just about ticket sales. It's about global brand equity, which completely shapes the new landscape of sports we consume today. And hey, we absolutely can't forget Brazil. If we briefly contrast Mbappé with Brazil's crown jewel, Vinicius Jr., we see another titan sitting perfectly at that massive 150 million euro mark. It kind of takes the historical, passionate rivalry between Brazil and France and translates it directly into modern market caps. The economic battles between these individual assets on the pitch are honestly just as fierce as the football itself.
Section 5. Does money buy glory?
So we've talked a lot about billions and millions, but we need a bit of a stark reality check on the economics of international football. The crucial point here is the massive drop-off when you look at the teams at the bottom of the valuation table. The sheer financial inequality is just breathtaking. You have Costa Rica's entire squad valued at just 11.6 million euros. Qatar sits at 14.2 million and Saudi Arabia at 14.5 million. Remember, these are the total values of the entire 15 to 22-man rosters for these nations. Let's make this visual contrast as dramatic as possible. Kylian Mbappé, one single French player, is valued at 180 million euros. The entire Costa Rica squad is valued at 11.6 million. That literally means one French attacker is worth more than 15 times an entire rival nation's World Cup squad. It's a classic David and Goliath scenario, but calculated on an accountant's spreadsheet.
Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. As we've seen, France is an absolute economic juggernaut. They're a meticulously crafted portfolio of premium athletic assets. But the beautiful thing about football is that the pitch isn't made of money. So does market dominance, a 1.19 billion euro valuation, and an attack led by a 180 million euro asset directly correlate with lifting the trophy? Or will the passion, the tactics, and the sheer unpredictability of the sport disrupt the market? I'll leave you to ponder that. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and we'll see you next time.